Ever stop and think why you believe that helping someone is right and hurting them is wrong? I mean, where does that deep gut level certainty even come from? Is it something wired into our DNA? Is it taught to us by our culture? Or is it some kind of universal truth that we're all tapping into? Well, today we are opening the ultimate case file, the origin of morality itself.
This quote right here, this really gets to the heart of the whole puzzle. I mean, on one hand, it makes perfect evolutionary sense to help out our family and our tribe, right? That's just a solid survival strategy. But that doesn't really explain how we came up with this grand idea of universal human rights, the belief that a total stranger halfway across the world has rights that we have to respect. Biology alone just doesn't seem to get us all the way there. And that puts the spotlight right back on you. When you make a call based on what you feel is right or wrong, what are you actually drawing on? Is it some ancient instinct, the lessons you learned growing up, or is it something else, something bigger? Hang on to that thought as we start digging into the evidence.
To try and crack this, we're going to investigate three main theories, whereas we're calling them three case files. First, we'll look at morality as a biological blueprint, then as a social script, and finally as a kind of universal law.
First up, let's dive into our deep evolutionary past. The theory here is that our moral sense isn't some fancy, high-minded idea we invented. Nope, it's a practical tool for survival that's been coded right into our genes over millions and millions of years. So, the key mechanism here is something called reciprocal altruism. You can basically think of it as the you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours principle, just playing out on a massive evolutionary scale. The groups of our early ancestors who cooperated, shared their food, and defended one another, well, they simply had a much better shot at surviving and passing on their gene.
Biologists like Richard Dawkins argue that what we experience as feelings of guilt or gratitude or fairness are, in a way, just incredibly sophisticated survival algorithms. These feelings helped our ancestors navigate their complex social groups, and they strengthened the bonds that literally kept them alive. And you can see how powerful this idea is, right? It totally explains that fierce, primal instinct to protect our kids and why we have these deep-seated taboos. But it's got this massive blind spot. It has a really hard time explaining why someone might choose to become a vegetarian for ethical reasons, or why a soldier would sacrifice their life for a buddy who's not even a blood relative. These actions just seem to fly in the face of pure genetic self-interest.
All right, so if morality isn't all in our DNA, then what about the world we're born into? This brings us to our second case file, which suggests morality isn't a blueprint at all. It's more like a script, and it's written by our culture. This is the core idea of cultural relativism. It basically proposes that there's no single universal morality. Instead, every society develops its own unique set of rules, values, and beliefs, its own moral memes, you could say, and they're all shaped by that society's unique history and environment. And man, the evidence for this is pretty compelling. You just have to look at how wildly different these cultural scripts can be. In some societies, things like honor killings have been seen as a moral duty. In others, pacifism is held up as the highest possible ideal. From this perspective, trying to judge one culture by another's standards is like trying to play chess using the rules for checkers. It just doesn't work. But here is the massive, glaring problem for pure cultural relativism. If every moral code is just a local invention, then how on earth did nearly every nation on the planet come together after World War II to agree on something like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? That document was this monumental effort to find common ground, to say that despite all our cultural differences, some principles, like the right to life and liberty, are totally non-negotiable. It really suggests that maybe, just maybe, we share some kind of common moral core after all.
And that puzzle leads us directly to our third and honestly most mind-bending case file. The idea that morality isn't something we inherit or invent, but something we discover, an objective truth that exists out there, independent of us, just waiting to be found. This theory is called moral realism. It makes the bold claim that a statement like inflicting pointless suffering is wrong can be objectively true or false, in the same way the earth is round is true. It's not just a matter of opinion or what your culture thinks, it's a feature of reality itself. Okay, so even the people who believe this don't totally agree on how it works. On one side, you've got utilitarians, who think moral truths are based on concrete, natural facts, like the amount of happiness or suffering an action causes. But on the other side, you had thinkers like G.E. Moore, who made a much stranger argument.
He said that goodness is a fundamental property of the universe, and we can't break it down any further. We just recognize it. Kind of like how you can't explain the color yellow to someone who's never seen it. You just know it's yellow when you see it. But this whole idea faces a huge problem, which the philosopher John Mackey summed up perfectly. He basically said, hold on a second, what are these objective moral facts? Are they floating around in space? Can we see them or touch them? He called them queer because they would be completely unlike anything else we know of in the entire universe, which makes you wonder, how could we ever possibly know they even exist? So we've got our three competing theories: biology, culture, and universal law. They've all got some good points, and they've all got some big problems. So let's bring it all together and see what modern science has to say about all this.
This is a fantastic summary of where we are. Neuroscience can literally point to the part of our brain, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, that lights up when we make moral judgments. So yeah, there's a biological basis. Genetics, looking at twin studies, shows that some moral traits, like empathy, seem to be at least partly heritable. But then history just slaps us with the undeniable fact that our moral landscape can change dramatically, like with the abolition of slavery. That's a huge point for the cultural script theory. It really looks like the true answer isn't just one of these, but a super complex mix of all three.
But even after putting all these clues together, we are left with one final, profound question that science, on its own, might never be able to answer. And it all boils down to this classic philosophical problem, the difference between is and ought. Science, biology, anthropology, you name it, is incredible at describing what morality is. It can tell us how evolution or culture has shaped what we value, but it can't tell us what we ought to value. It can describe why a society did something, but it can never tell us whether that thing was truly right or truly wrong. And believe me, this is not just some abstract debate for a philosophy class anymore. It has become one of the most urgent questions of our time. As we build artificial intelligence, from self-driving cars that have to make split-second ethical choices to systems that could govern entire societies, we literally have to program them with a moral code. So whose code do we use? The one from our DNA, a script from one specific culture, or do we aim for universal law that we're still trying to fully discover? The case is still wide open.